Hi everyone, I'm Erin Green and I'm happy to bring you another interview with a young peace builder. Sitting with me tonight is Michelle Sherman, and she is coming to us from America. She is campus minister for retreats at Villanova University and has been an important part of the Pax Christi International movement in the United States. So Michelle, hi, and thank you for being with us. So why don't you start off and tell us a bit about yourself and how you came to Pax Christi?
Certainly. Thank you, Erin, and thank you for inviting me to this important conversation on this momentous occasion. And so I first came to Pax Christi back in about 2012, 2013. I was approached by Nancy Small, the former executive director of Pax Christi USA, when I was working for a religious community, the Religious of the Assumption, up in Worcester, Massachusetts. And that was where she lived and lives and is a spiritual director there. And this kind of flows into a few of my other points in that I'd like to make later, but just her ability to notice within me, oh, it sounds like you're interested in active nonviolence, gospel nonviolence, and how that relates to your role as a minister and working with young adults. And here, let me tell you more about Pax Christi USA and her very invitational way of really sharing resources on the spirituality of nonviolence, which then flowed into action and contemplation and advocacy, was really exciting to me. And so now I am a campus minister at Villanova University, which is an Augustinian and Catholic university. I work on a team of about 15 campus ministers, 8 graduate interns, and our role is to really provide spaces for spiritual expression, including liturgy, retreat work, advocacy, social justice work, and we also have a center for pastoral ministry education. So we work with our graduate students, our undergraduate students, our faculty and staff in providing ways in which for them to connect faith and spirituality in their lives.
Sounds great. Isn't it wonderful to have nice mentors in your life that help you see the path?
Absolutely.
Right. So that's a big campus ministry. I've heard of a lot of campuses where there's only one minister, and it's the ecumenical minister for, the entire community. So maybe could you tell us a little bit more about what kind of activities you undertake in your campus ministry and how it relates to this vocational identity relating to gospel nonviolence?
Mm-hmm, sure. Oh, thanks, Erin. So yes, you're right. We're really gifted with a larger staff that we can be present in so many spaces on campus. Our university has about 6,500 undergraduates, and then with graduate and law students, we have about 11,000. So to give a sense too of the campus ministry staff and the larger body of students. And so my work is really with our spirituality team. And so I work in both the formation and accompaniment of student leaders who lead retreats. And then I also have some that I will lead. Most of them in this time of COVID tend to be a hybrid of either virtual and small group experiences on campus. We're not going away, which has provided some really unique opportunities in offering students an ability to see how their faith life is here and now, and has the potential to not be something like shut away, but and then coming back to their life, but and of course there's value in that as well. But I think I'm really sitting in that space of how can we take this time of being more close to home and connecting with the Gospels in a new way in our identities, wherever we might fall on a religious tradition too. Because we do have, sorry, I feel like I'm just rambling.
No, it's your story. It's your story. No, we don't know any of this. We don't know any of this. This is all new for us. So please feel free to tell us about it. I'm curious, how have the students responded to the pandemic? Has it been like a really high stress time, or what has surprised you maybe about how the student community has been coping?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think the diversity of how the pandemic is affecting students has been surprising. I have some students who are studying from home right now because of either being immunocompromised or not comfortable with coming into a place where you're living in dorms, and I think that's completely completely understandable. Campus right now has students on campus living in dorms. The majority of classes are virtual, and a few of them are in person, depending on labs and things like that. And in conversations with students, I'm often struck by some where it seems like they have a very solid understanding of the global implications of this pandemic and how it's affecting specifically communities of color at a disproportionate rate. And then I have some students as well who seem to not have that global awareness and are more in the space of grief of the disappointments that this is bringing me.
Right. Yeah.
This has affected my senior year of sorts, and I think all of these spaces are valid, and also how can I as a minister be with them wherever they are, and also invite them to see how it's affecting others in different ways, and to be mindful of that. I will say in terms of our planning for retreat work, I've been so impressed by the students' sort of can-do attitude of making sure that we do still provide spaces for reflection and meaningful conversation, especially during this time of isolation. I think it's been abundantly clear how much we desire to be with each other and desire to reach out and give hugs and things like this. And out of care for each other right now, we can't do that. And so I've been very impressed with how students have understood that sense of care for each other. And even when I'm walking across campus, we'll all have our masks on, and I've seen a few students even call each other out if they see two others.
Oh, that's great.
Too close together. They'll be like, that's the sign right there, social distance, 6 feet, remember? And then when we do have small groups meet in person, outside, socially distant, the student leaders have been very responsive and responsible in making sure that they are accountable for those in their group. So they've even come up with ways of expressing of an affirmation that don't involve hugs. So they'll say to our small group, how are we going to do this? How are we going to show affirmation and love to each other that don't involve hugs? And they'll come up with all sorts of fun ways of doing.
Oh, that's so nice. That's great.
that are safe.
Yeah.
So I think, all in all, to answer your question, sorry, the diversity of perspectives.
There, I'll give you a heart there.
Yes.
for that. That's very good. So you have a bit of a mixed campus, and it's people probably coming from all over the world. So you're working as a Catholic campus minister, but I'm guessing the community is not 100% Catholic. Tell me a little bit about the ecumenical and interfaith makeup of your work, and how you hold that all together while still being rooted in your Catholic identity.
Sure. Oh, thanks. This is a question that I journal about a lot, and then
okay.
do with a lot, because I think it is so important in any interfaith space that people feel comfortable bringing all that they are, their whole self, and feel like that we can search together, as the motto of campus ministry is, we search together. And that comes directly from the writings of St. Augustine, to be of one heart, one mind, have unity within diversity. And that, in fact, it is part of the gospel call to engage with others of differing faiths and differing interpretations of the same faith. So in a group of students, I might have students that are leaders. One semester we had a leader who was Hindu, a leader who was Jewish, a few Catholics, Protestants, and one leader who called herself a cashew because she had a parent that was Catholic and a parent that was Jewish, and so her expression, she felt like there were two that really spoke to the essence of who she was.
Right.
And so within these spaces, our campus ministry is predominantly Catholic. We have, as I said, 15 campus ministers, 14 are Catholic, and 3 are Augustinians. And then we also have a campus minister who is a Presbyterian minister. And then we also have in our graduate, in our pastoral ministry graduate program, we also have a Muslim chaplain and actually she graduated, so actually no mind. And in part, as part of our sacred spaces at Villanova, we also have a Muslim prayer room. So
that's wonderful.
Yeah, so I think one of the really important calls of our time, especially as we celebrate the 50th anniversary of Nostra Aetate, the Vatican II document on engaging with world religions, I think we have a really important role so that we can create space where all are welcome to sit in these big questions that surpass religious tradition. What does it mean to be a person of faith and live in an authentic way that seeks the good? What does it mean to tap into ritual and faith practice that speak to a larger way of navigating in a world that needs to address important issues of climate change and justice and racial justice and equity? And I think engaged in a practice of peace building, peacemaking, call to gospel nonviolence, whatever that looks like, it needs to tap into a spiritual well of some kind, because if we're always going, then there's nothing that replenishes us. And so
right, yeah.
So I think ministers have something very, very special to offer in a world of peace building and peacemaking. Sorry.
No, it's wonderful. You're doing great. So maybe you could tell us a little bit more about gospel nonviolence, because that's something that's very important to you and in a way brought you to the university. Can you tell me a little bit about how it's taking hold in different places and how you've seen it grow over your time at Villanova?
Sure, yes. Um, so this really excites me because it also makes me think about how it makes me think about the way in which my own faith formation was almost impoverished until I tapped into seeing the gospel through the lens of nonviolence. So it wasn't until like I was post graduation until my time after college that again Nancy Small and I was working full time, and Nancy Small gave me this book that she wrote. It was called Seizing the Nonviolent Moments.
Mm-hmm.
And she takes the parables of Jesus and sees them through the lens of nonviolence. And I think part of my growing up, like I had seen like little threads of that, but it wasn't necessarily named nonviolence or gospel nonviolence,
Mm-hmm.
or resistance. It was seen as, I don't know, maybe it just wasn't really named as that. And I think one of the gospels that that really touched me was the story of Jesus and the woman caught in adultery. And there's that image of all the Pharisees and everyone, wanting to stone her. And then there's Jesus who bends down and starts writing in the ground. And what Nancy's book does is look at that and say, okay, what can we see here? And especially in terms of bystander intervention, or
Right.
how we see peace in different ways of dealing with of conflict. What is that? That's distraction. That's a tactic that is used in peace work. And then he gets the attention off of the person who's the target, and has people look into their own selves. So I think that even seeing the Gospels in new ways, which, and I say new because it's always been there, it's just that it hasn't been seen with that lens.
Right.
To me, it makes me think of, wow, like our seminary educations need this. The pastoral way that we train ministers needs to have this. The way that I lead reflection sessions with students needs to incorporate this, because
right. Yeah.
I've seen some of the graduate students that I've worked with this year who are like, Michelle, how did I not know this? How did I not connect demilitarization to Jesus, who grew up in an occupied space? How do I, so it just makes me excited to see that, and some of the ways in which I've seen and tried to like usher it along.
Right.
Our university has included really working closely with our Center for Peace and Justice Education, under our umbrella of mission and ministry in the university. I think because we have such a large campus ministry staff, it's so easy to be like kind of in our own silo. And so for the past 2 years, I've worked with Catherine Geddick-Soltis, who's our director of the Center for Peace and Justice Education. And we've invited representatives from Pace Bene, which is based on the West Coast, in to run trainings for our faculty and staff. We started very small with a group of 25 faculty and staff from everywhere from the Augustinian Institute, of course, campus ministry, peace and justice, but also philosophy, theater, student life, our Office for Intercultural Affairs, and fraternity and sorority life. So it's really something that we tried to cast a large net. From that initial training, we've now drafted a vow of nonviolence for.
Oh, cool. Tell us about that. That
our
sounds really
university.
interesting.
Oh,
Yeah.
sure. Yeah. So, so Pax Christi has a vow of nonviolence, and in our conversation with our faculty and staff group, we thought, well, Villanova should have one. Yeah, and that should come from us. So we this last day, International Day of Peace, September 21st, there was a team of 3 of us that drafted a version of a vow of nonviolence specifically for Villanova, again incorporating words and themes from our Augustinian identity, from our call to be of one heart and one mind, unity within diversity, and then that I think a number of our people that are within that core group reached out to the students that we work with. And in March, we had another training specifically for students on active nonviolence. Unfortunately, that was the time of COVID, and so it went from in person to over Zoom, but
right.
it was almost like more well attended because it was more accessible, and so that was an all-day training. And then from that, several of the students who were in that training then participated in our first ever Artisans of Peace retreat, which I headed up. And again, this was as part of the September 21st International Day of Peace. We had mini peace polls that we gave out for people to and then have at their desks, since we were spending more time at our desks in this time of COVID.
Right. Oh, that's so nice. Have something to hold. Yeah.
Yeah. I should actually run downstairs and grab some later and bring them to show you. And so we had mini peace polls for people. We had the vow of nonviolence for Villanovans. And then we had a week, a virtual retreat called Artisans of Peace, which of course kind of harkens to one of the awards that Pax Christi gives out, an Artisan of Peace. And for our retreat, we looked at the intersection of art, spirituality, and justice, and how have artists in the visual arts or music addressed injustice and sought to bring peace. How can you be an artisan of peace even if you don't consider yourself an artist? And what is the role of art and spirituality in our own journeys of faith? So so this kind of like multi-tiered approach of reaching a group of people, and then from those group of people seeing what they're interested in, and then making a multi-pronged sort of program. Upcoming in January, and then actually it's moved to February now because of campus opening later. But in February, we will have the annual Freedom School, which is a series of workshops over a few days in honor of MLK, Martin Luther King Jr. And the workshops are usually about 45 minutes, an hour long, and dedicated to all sorts of different ways of addressing peace, addressing injustice, anti-racism. And so one of the sessions this next February will be led by some of our core group on active nonviolence. And then that module will then train people on campus to then give to the students that they work in. So students in service learning could have this 1 hour leadership module on active nonviolence.
Cool.
In fraternity and sorority life could have a 1-hour module on active nonviolence and how that relates to anti-hazing efforts, for example. So I'm really excited to see where it goes. I'm also, I'm just also so aware and so grateful for the ways in which all these little like tentacles are moving through campus, and some of which I didn't even know of. So last year there was, it came to my attention like after the fact, and I was like, wow, this is so great. I also didn't know what was going on, but like, it's not like anybody needs to report to me or Center for Peace and Justice when they do this, but
Right.
There's an online journal called Expositions, which is a journal of the Center for, I'm going to repeat this. Yes, so there was a journal called Expositions, which is the interdisciplinary studies of the humanities journal, which is published by our Villanova Center for Liberal Education. And they had an entire issue dedicated to the future of nonviolence in Catholic social teaching. And again, just one example of something I didn't know was happening on campus, learned about after the fact, but was like, oh, this is wonderful, regardless of whether or not it came through our core group or another group. I think any way that the university can contribute and keep active nonviolence, gospel nonviolence at the forefront of who we are is really a win. So I was really happy.
It's wonderful. It's wonderful when all these little activities actually just be kind of soaked into the culture of an institution, right? Where it becomes second nature, and that's something that becomes obvious to everyone. So it sounds like you're finding more opportunities than you'll ever have, the chance to pursue. I want to talk to you a little bit more about young people, because that's why we're doing these interviews. So tell me, what do you think some of the unique gifts that young people, the students that you work with, you yourself bring to peace building? What's distinctive?
Thank you for this question. I'm going to quote Sister Patty, who is the former director of Pax Christi USA, and she, in an address to young college students last year, she was one of the keynote speakers at the Ignatian Family Teach-In, and she called forth the energy of young adults. She said, "You have a collective power." And I think that like we've seen this very clearly in our year of 2020 here, with anti-racism, racial justice. Many times it has been young adults who have been leading that charge, and the charge that has been being led for years, and that now has come to a more heightened awareness. I think young adults have eyes wide open to connect again to this year. I remember, I guess like November or December of 2019, a coworker, I think, like said something like kind of offhanded, like, here we go into year 2020. May we all see clearly in 2020. And it was really like an offhanded kind of remark, but it really stayed with me, because I do feel like this year of COVID, in the United States, racial justice, which again, the injustice has been there for years, almost 400 years, and even before. But now that it's come to even a more heightened awareness, like we can't not see clearly. And around, especially young people in movements against ecological disaster and climate change, it's been Greta, it's been the young people who have come forward, and it's often the countries that have done the least amount to contribute to climate change, which are the countries that are suffering the most.
Right. Yeah, it's totally
I really
disproportionate.
feel, yes, I really feel like young people are seeing this with eyes wide open. I I have this quote from Shelley Douglas that I kind of had off to the side that I thought, oh, if it comes up, I'll bring it up. So Shelley Douglas is one of the Catholic workers at Mary House Catholic Worker in Birmingham, Alabama, and here in the States. And I read this quote from her the other day, and it just really stayed with me. She writes, "The discipline of nonviolence requires of us that we move into the various forms of non-cooperation. We will probably move slowly, one step at a time. Each step will lead into another step. Each step will be a withdrawal from support of what is wrong, and at the same time, a building of an alternative." And from what I've seen in the actions, in the dreams, in the conversations with young people, is that they want to withdraw from what they see as wrong,
Right.
and at the same time build up an alternative through various forms of non-cooperation, whether that's I refuse to cooperate with a racist model of church, whether that's I refuse to cooperate with a system of consumerism, and from that I'm going to buy secondhand everything and refrain from a consumerist practice of Christmas. I really think that they have the eyes to see that, which again, back to Jesus saying, "Whoever has eyes ought to see, whoever has ears ought to hear." I really feel like they have that ability.
That's wonderful. Well, we should all look more towards the example of young people. And then finally, just to kind of wrap all of this up, what do you think movements like Pax Christi International, movements like Pax Christi USA, the peace movement as a whole, how can we do better to honor the leadership and involvement of young people? Because sometimes maybe we don't do so great on that front. I think I think that's pretty common in a lot of places.
Oh, thank you for this question. I have a list, Erin.
Oh, do you? Hey, that's great, Michelle. You can tell you're really working in an academic setting. How well you've prepared for this interview.
Oh gosh, I wish I had a color-coded chart, but I just have some.
All right, so tell us this wonderful list, and we'll take it as recommendations to wrap up this interview.
Okay, thank you. And again, I just returned to Nancy Small for this first one. Personal invitations. I cannot tell you how affirming and exciting it was for me to like feel seen in that way, you know? And I think about early Christian communities where leadership is called forth from the community. It's not one person going off and then thinking, oh, I have a call, and then coming back, although certainly God could call in that way. But it was Jesus calling forth someone who may have been young, may not have been young. But I really think that there's something so important there. And to the example of Nancy Small, 3 of the young people who were on the Pax Christi National Council with me, they were all mentored by her. And so as we were going around the introduction, it was like, oh, I heard about Pax Christi from Nancy Small. Oh, you did too. And I think that says something about the power of individual
right.
Particularly because young people in our current context don't typically see membership in an organization the same way as generations past of I pay a membership fee and then I am a member. They like to be really like engaged and feel ownership. And so any way of calling forth and inviting, and I myself, I still feel like a a beginner in many ways in this living an active, nonviolent lifestyle. And so seeing, being invited into that was really important for me. And so who knows, maybe you could gift memberships to young people you know and share what interest and gifts you notice in them. Another one is being present in young adult spaces, including online. And so I've been really encouraged by this time of seeing how so many peace building organizations have been using webinars and almost like house churches through Zoom at this time, because that's a way in which we can still reach people at this time. And also social media has been great. I'm probably like one of the only quote young adults that isn't really like super into social media, but I think it's really important. So and even seeing how young organizers have been using TikTok or Instagram to organize has been really, really amazing. Mm-hmm. Another point is like continuing to live it yourselves. I think young people are really looking for models and individuals who are living authentically.
Right.
And any time where we can see individuals who have dedicated their life to gospel nonviolence, who are living authentically, and sharing that and inviting others into it, that's really exciting. And then also supporting your lay local ministers, and at your faith communities too. If there's either campus ministers or parish ministers, directors of religious education, chaplaincies, send them Pax Christi information. Offer to help them design a retreat. If they're like not doing it themselves, then like encourage them or offer to walk them through what it could look like. Invite them to one that you're doing. I think that there's something really important there. Oh, also lay missioner programs. A lot of communities will have year-long communities of young adults that live in community, in intentional community, who are living nonviolence and simplicity and justice. And so all they need is just a little bit more.
Right.
So yeah.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. Do you have one more?
I forgot to say, I realized, Erin, that I never really answered your first question about contribution to Pax Christi USA. So
so why don't you close with that? Why don't you tell us a little bit more about what you did for Pax Christi USA? We did kind of skip over that bit a little bit. That was my fault, not yours.
Oh, no, that's okay. For the being invited to be on the National Council was really quite amazing, and I really enjoyed that time. So I was on the National Council of Pax Christi USA for 3 years, 2017 and 2020, and then through 2020. And currently I'm working on the Young Adult Caucus, which had planned our first Creating the Beloved Community gathering for April 2020 with the team of Madeline Labriola, Bob Shine, Isaac Chandler, and myself. Unfortunately, because of COVID, we ended up canceling that in-person gathering, but we continued to gather over Zoom monthly. So we have a sort of a Pray, Study, Act model, again, connecting to that deep well of spirituality of nonviolence, and then studying the different 4 priorities of Pax Christi USA, and then committing to specific actions. And so now that we have been gathering in this virtual space, we hope to relaunch again in 2021, especially with our new director, Johnny Zakovich. And that's really exciting because part of his plan as he came to the director role had a specific vision for including young adults. And then my role has also included writing some of the Advent prayer books for our national membership. And then there's also the prayer for peace and solidarity in a time of pandemic that I wrote for our membership team.
Sounds wonderful. It does not sound like you're bored. You do a remarkable job holding it all together, and I'm so grateful for your time, the gift of your time and the gift of your story, especially when I know you're probably spending a lot of time online. So this is one more Zoom and one less hug. I'm sorry for that. But I know that this is a wonderful contribution to our series on young peace builders, and that everyone who takes a moment to sit with us and enjoy this interview will come away with it. And I know that they will feel really good about the Pax Christi movement and about the role of young peace builders in it. So Michelle, I thank you. And I look forward to the next time we get to chat, and eventually when we get to meet in person.
Yes. Oh, me too. Thank you, Erin.
Yeah. Thank you, Michelle. Take good care.
Oh,
Bye.
thank you. Bye-bye.